Whoops. Well, I'm sorry, folks. It seems that YouTube is not doing too well this morning, which means the whole internet is not going to be doing too well this morning, which is a shame. But anyway, good morning, everybody. If you were still in mainland France, you would still be celebrating July 14th. Of course, here it's July 15th, and that was the very thrilling start of their Marseillaise, sung by Muriel Mathieu. Absolute amazing. It's my favourite national anthem, so I was determined to play it. We had it several times yesterday, but it's just it's amazing anthem actually, because it's quite a gory words when you translate them into English, but it's very, very stirring. So good morning, everybody. This is Gold Harbour Radio, ZMH286. And Patricia and David, and it's now stopped raining here, but we're going to be having rain on and off all day. Probably not as torrential as it was yesterday, but certainly it's going to be not a very pleasant day. 13 degrees outside. I bet that makes you all feel rather smug that you're where you are. 6 knots from the west, 1006.4. So that's the position here today. Yesterday it was absolutely grim, torrential rain, big fronts sort of basically covered. I don't think anyone escaped the rain here yesterday. Torrential rain, very strong winds, lightning strikes, you name it, we got it, and it wasn't very pleasant. So that's what the weather has been like. It sounds like it's been not all that wonderful in some parts of the islands, but I think Fiji did all right. And we'll soon catch up on people this morning. All right, let's see. Manawai, whereabouts are you at the moment? Over? Oh, you're very light, Craig. I think I'm going to leave you till just before we start the weather, so I'll come back to you just before it's 7:30. We just talked to Alan west of Newcastle there, and that was fine, but I suspect that you probably are in by now, and it's a little bit hard to hear. I wouldn't mind a radio signal from both Fiji and Tonga from one of the stronger boats. Could I just pause for a check, please? Over. Wow, not very good anywhere by the sound of it, so I didn't even hear who responded to me. Okay, well, we'll try and carry on here. There's not a lot that I've put down in news today because the cricket has just finished. Now, I know some of you will be not interested in cricket. It's a very complex game, and even the one-day game, which is less complex than the test matches, is rather difficult to explain if you are used to just the slugging type match of a baseball game. But New Zealand were playing England in the final of the World Cup, and it was probably, New Zealand were not the favourites, 3-1 actually, but boy, did they put on the most incredible game. And so I've been listening to the ball by ball. What happened, folks, was that New Zealand were 241 for 8. They batted first. Pretty respectable score. What happens, folks, is you get 50 overs, 300 balls, and they got 241. So it was all on to get the Poms out for less than 241. Well, believe it or not, they got exactly 241. I don't think I've ever heard of a World Cup final where they had to go into a super over. I didn't even know what a super over was. But it is the way in a one-day match that they determine who is going to win. So what happens is that each side gets 6 balls, 1 over. Well, it looked really, really good for a start. England were batting, and they, until the last ball, only had about 9 runs. But they slogged a 6 over the field, gone for good, a ball. So they ended up with 15 runs. Ooh, this is going to be a bit tricky for New Zealand, but New Zealand went in, and this is not very long ago, and they were doing well. The first ball was a wide, so they got 1 for nothing. And then who got a 6? I can't remember who got a 6. Neesham, I think it was. Neesham and Guptill were batting, of course, and well, one of them got a 6. So all they needed on the last ball, it was touch and go. They would get 2 and they would get 1, and anyway, they had 1 ball left, 2 runs to win the game. So Guptill hits it, and certainly they got 1, so they've drawn the game, and then he is out. So even in the super over, 6 balls each, it was a draw. Can you believe it? It was so damn exciting. However, from a New Zealand point of view, that's where our balloon got busted, because they don't keep playing super overs. They then count back and see who got the most boundaries in the entire match. And of course, they had done this before the game. So a boundary, for you folk that don't know it, is when the ball doesn't get stopped within the field and it goes to a boundary, it's a 4. If it goes over the boundary without touching the ground, it's a 6. But England did have more boundaries than New Zealand, and so they take the World Cup, which is rather nice given that it's in England at Lord's. But can you believe it? I mean, really, neither team would be downhearted after a game like that. It was just an incredible game. Boy, you know, you could have paid thousands of dollars to see a match like that. It was totally incredible. Even just listening on the radio, it was absolutely amazing. And I poked my nose out when it was dark to see there were a lot of houses with lights on, so those with televisions would have been watching it. And I would imagine that there were a lot of people calling in late to work today.
About to go over 10 grand.
Yeah, there was a lot of money on the TAB, by the way. One guy had put $10,000 on New Zealand winning, so he would have been, that was when it was 6-1, and he would have won an awful lot of money had that last ball been any different. But there you have it. There will be a lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas discussed over the next few days, but that was the end of it. Absolutely incredible game for those who are interested in cricket. I would explain it to you others, but it's quite a complicated, difficult game to explain briefly. So when you're in New Zealand, you folk from the other parts of the world that don't play cricket, you can go along to a game and try and sort it out yourselves. Actually, there were some very, very thrilling other games played in the weekend. The Wimbledon final, well, actually the ladies' final wasn't so thrilling. Simona Halep from Romania beat Serena Williams quite conclusively. But the men's final was a real nail-biter too. They were 2-2, and this was Novak Djokovic and Federer. And in the last game, Djokovic saved 2 championship points and went on to win 13-12. So that was a pretty exciting game as well. So just incredible sports. It's really good to see some good sports games, isn't it? I tell you, it was sort of exciting. It was hard to go and look at normal news after the cricket, but I will tell you that in New York there was a power cut on Saturday night. Excuse me a minute. A power cut in downtown New York, 30 blocks, would you believe it? So that meant that all the shows were cancelled. People poured out of everything. Jennifer Lopez was at Madison Square Gardens halfway through a song, and that all got finished. It was a transformer blowing up, but caused absolute chaos in New York. But the big news in our papers this morning was a huge drug bust. A New Zealand boat, sailboat, sloop, just an ordinary looking, looks like about 12 to 14 metres, set off from New Zealand, just like most of you have done, but met a mothership on its way to Fiji. It was a boat from Tauranga, the Ilata, with a known drug person on board. This man, now 65 years old, Mr. Hamish Thompson from Tauranga. He's known to police from his years. He was part of a 7-family, very, very wealthy family in Christchurch. Got siblings that are lawyers and doctors and so on. But he decided to be a journalist and get into the drug business. Anyway, he got caught when he arrived in Australia and had 1.4 tons of cocaine on board. It's the biggest haul in Australia. But boy, it was a good catch for customs. They had actually put 2.5 years ago, they had put a tracking device in his boat at Tauranga Marina. That's the public one. And it has lasted the time. The battery had lasted, so all they did was track him. And he had actually done exactly the same thing about 20 years ago. So you'd think he would have learned. He got caught that time too. So now at 65, he probably won't be doing it again because he will be, I don't know whether he will be in Australia jail or New Zealand jail. They'll probably keep him over there for a while, I would imagine. So there you are. If you wonder why you get a tough time when you come into ports and so on and so forth, and they want to know exactly where you are, they do have a few ne'er-do-wells to have to deal with. What else have I got to tell you? Cuba's got new trains from China. They're on the first one's on its way to Guantanamo as we speak. It's a 15-hour journey now instead of a several-day journey. Italy, wildfires in the south around Puglia and in Tortoli in Sardinia, so the usual sort of summer-type weather. Louisiana, the big cyclone there was, well, not a fizzer, it's bringing lots of rain, but it's now downgraded to a tropical storm, so it's no longer TC Barry. It's now a tropical storm bringing flooding along the Gulf Coast there. And that's about it. Let me tell you, I'll just go back to Manawai at the moment to see where they are, but I'll give you a bit of news from the rest of the South Pacific. Vanuatu, Luganville, thank you, Mr. Troy. No wind, overcast, 1010 and a lovely 25 degrees. Yasau is 24 degrees, 1010.5, 8 to 10 knots east, no cloud, no rain. Yes, it does look rather good on the satellite picture, John. Local talent, they're close to Luganville, so that's much the same. No wind. They're anchored somewhere. Must be around on the eastern side there. No good radio signal. No, we know that. Citrus Tart, sunny and calm in Suva, and a goodish radio signal. Well, thank you for that. At least we're getting to Fiji, and that's about it. So I'll just try for Manawai again. Manawai. Let's see if we can hear you this time. Go ahead. Well, I can't copy them, and I know they've got a good radio. Is there anybody that can pick them up for me and let me know where they are? Over. Thanks, Ron. Go ahead. Manawai, just let Pilgrim know where you are. Over. Boy, I'm struggling with you too, Ron. Look, I won't delay it now. I'll hope that things get better after David has finished, so hopefully you'll still be on the radio and I'll catch up then. All right, North Star have just reported in from Albert Cove in Ranby, where there's about 10% clouds and only a trace of wind, and they're on their way to Taveuni to get some fruit and veggies. I guess they're sick of coconuts. All right, I'm going to pass the microphone. Hopefully you folk will hear David wherever you are. We've got a bit more power than you have, but it's kind of noisy here. I guess the weather might have something to do with it. And I'll try and pick up the folk later. There's no point in trying to battle at the moment. Here's David.
All right, good morning. I'll try to talk a little bit louder. Sometimes that helps. Yeah, we had a weekend, as Patricia said. We've had one heck of a weekend. The complex low over New Zealand, that has brought rain, high winds. The entire Tasman is under cyclonic flow. Pretty much what we told you on Friday. That's come true. It's a mess out there. The main depression in this system has a central pressure of 984. It's pretty nasty, folks. The weather has caused havoc over much of the country because of mostly the heavy rain. Off to the east now lies our nearly stationary high. It's got a central pressure of 1034 millibar, and it's trying to ridge toward Tonga. Now, over Australia, the other side here, the next high is developing. It's about a 1037. It's a big one, too. And it's pushing against the complex low that's over New Zealand. So what we've got is an incredible squash zone developing in the Tasman Sea. We've got very cold southwest winds to the west and strong northwest winds to the east. So cyclonic flow then remains over the entire Tasman and New Zealand through probably Wednesday. Seas just east of Sydney, 6 meters, and in the mid-Tasman, the prognosis for Tuesday, they expect the seas to rise to 8 meters. So over the cruising routes west of the dateline, we find numerous troughs and fronts. New Caledonia, Vanuatu, they're two recipients of this mess. The Vanuatu trough extends to the southern Solomons, and we have a secondary trough that's originating in the Solomons as well. That extends to Rotuma. And then we have another trough that runs from Tuvalu over to Tokelau, and it goes onward to the southern Cooks. And lastly, we've got another trough that's lying over, guess where, the northern Cooks. We've got a possible trough later in the week for Fiji and Tonga, and that will be in the Wednesday, Thursday time frame. That's what it looks like at this point. Activity from this may actually continue on to Saturday. Now, for the intrepids that are at Wallace, up there in good old Wallace, we've got some pretty nice weather today. Tomorrow might be some possible showers. Late in the day tomorrow, we may be looking at a few more showers than what is anticipated, but trough conditions look like possibly Thursday and Friday, and that should affect Samoa as well. That part of the world does tend to get a fair amount of troughing this time of the year. Okay, looking at Tonga itself now, a strong wind warning and small craft advisory is still in force for virtually all Tongan coastal waters. I'm seeing easterlies around 20 knots today. Tomorrow, bit of a wind shift. Looks like northeasterlies about 15 to 20. They'll be easing a little bit as the day wears on. Now, Wednesday looks like a possible clash of northwest and northeast winds. That'll create trough conditions, and that is another good example of directional convergence. Winds coming from different directions, different densities, clashing. That's if it happens, so we'll see what happens later in the week. Seas look to be about 3 meters out in the open waters, with an easterly swell coming in at about 2.5 meters. And I'll give you a few actual conditions. Vavao, this is early this morning. Easterlies 4 knots, scattered to broken. Also, quite a bit of towering cumulus reported in Vavao. Barometer 10, 12, and they did have early showers. The Hapai's east 14, scattered and they also have got quite a bit of towering cumulus, and the barometer 10-13. And down in Tongatapu, southeast 6 with scattered cloud, and the barometer a little bit stronger, 10-15, 1015. Now over to Fiji, where, well, imagery shows mostly fine conditions, as we've had some of the boats reporting. That's particularly in the north, but there are cloud clusters over Viti Levu, Kendavu, the southern Lao. These clouds are coming and going, so there's always a chance for scattered or isolated showers in these sort of conditions. The only nearby trough is over Rotuma. We don't know of any yachts, I don't think, there at this time. Now, the strong high that's to the east of New Zealand, the one I talked about earlier, that's bringing quite fresh winds to Fiji. So Fiji Met has a strong wind warning in force for northern Vanua Levu waters, southwest Viti Levu, the Asawas, Mamanuca waters, also down in Kendavu and Batui Ra passes. So quite a bit of breeze down there. Expect southeast 20 to 25, and of course rough seas with those winds. Now the winds are expected to ease a little bit tomorrow, east to southeast 15 to 20. Now the early radar loop shows, well, scattered showers over the Sori area, the western Koro Sea, the Kendavu Pass, and I see them elsewhere as well, but very brief, come, they go very quickly. Now, the METARs this morning, the actual airport conditions are quite dated. They're not current, in other words. Quite a lazy Monday morning for Fiji Met. Too much kava, I think, maybe on Sundays. So, anyway, I don't have very much to report as far as actuals go. I've got a couple. Nandi, east at 7, scattered, barometer 10-10. And the Sori over there near Suva, northwest 3, scattered, barometer 1011. Now, my forecast for Tuesday is a little bit different from Fiji Met. I'm seeing northeast to north winds over the northern Lao, but northwest over Viti Levu and surrounds. And that includes Kendavu. Pretty light air, though. But from a different direction from what Fiji Met's talking about. Now, later on Tuesday, a shift to the southwest for the bottom half of Fiji, if you will, and southeasterlies for the upper half. And then we're going to see a little bit of clashing over the Lao, where we've got northwest winds clashing with northeast winds. So a lot of wind shifts on Tuesday. All about the group, so be prepared for that. Quite difficult to forecast them. Over to Vanuatu now, not looking so good for the northern half. Very high, cold rain clouds on imagery. The southern half shows cloud as well, but not as intense as the northern half. And all of this is part of the trough that I mentioned earlier. Now, the winds appear fairly light by lunch. I would say southeast 10 to 15 knots from Afate northward, but northerly quadrant from Erromango down to Anisham. Now, tomorrow, it looks like south-southwest. They'll be clashing with east to northeast winds, and winds from these two directions are going to help maintain the trough. And we've got a few actuals there this morning. Santo, west-southwest at 2 knots, scattered to broken, barometer 10-12. Fate, easterly 2, broken 10-12 as well. And Tana was calm, scattered to overcast, barometer 10-11. And lastly, Anisham was calm, scattered, barometer 10-12. So very little gradient. You can see that on the barometric pressures. So we're going to have a fairly mellow day wind-wise. for Vanuatu. Not so with cloud and rain, however, due to the frontal activity or trough activity. Over to Newcal, plenty of cloud in play there on imagery, all part of the trough from New Zealand. The winds are quite light though, around 5 knots and quite variable. So in other words, no real discernible direction, particularly down in the southern lagoon. So expect cloud and scattered showers today. By this afternoon, the winds become southwest to south in the 10 to 20 knot range. Early tomorrow, southwest 15 to 20, a little bit more breeze, partly cloudy, isolated showers. The winds, though, get lighter by lunch, and there'll be southerlies in the 10 knot range. And I'll give you some actuals early this morning. Blowing out on the outer reef, southeast up to 20 knots. Field of Pan, south-southeast at 8. And Noumea, quite a bit of breeze in Noumea, southeast 22, getting up to 22 knots there. And, well, that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments, come now. Oh, there was one yacht wanting to go from Falanga to Suva. A couple of yachts, I guess. It's going to be pretty mellow for the next 2 days. You're not going to have any problem doing that from Falanga up to Suva.
But not today, really, because of that northerly winds.
Yeah, well, hang on here. I'll give it back to the chief and take another look. I looked rather early this morning. We'll see if anything changed in a minute.
Yeah, the way I heard your forecast, there was northeast going northwest today and then going south tomorrow, so they might be better off delaying a bit. That's not Mesotroid, Mesoluna and Bla Elinor. Good morning to you in Falanga. Hopefully you can hear that, because often the conditions are not very good from Falanga. I will be talking to Pilgrim in a minute, but is there anybody else with any questions before I do that? This radio noise has been a problem from still spilling over from the problem that we had last week. Okay, Ron, we'll give it a third chance. Go ahead and I'll see if I can copy you. Over. Oh, and I've got you good now, so thank you very much for that. So they are in Tongatapu awaiting customs clearance. So well done, you guys. So I'm sure that you'll be having a good rest. Thank you, Ron. Whereabouts are you guys? Oh, okay. It looks pretty nice in Fiji. Mind you, it's about time it became nice up there. It has not been a great day or great season for good weather in the islands, that's for sure. In a report from Chara at Muscat Cove, clear and calm, so everything is looking pretty good over that side of the country. All right, I'm passing the microphone back to see about this trip from Falanga to Suva.
Well, assuming that you're leaving today, I think that's the word we got. The winds down in the Falanga area, basically, from what I can see, about 10 knots, pretty much out of the northeast. So that's not a worry, leaving there. And a number of models pretty much agree with that. Looking at Tuesday, though, is where we do get the shift, like I said earlier. And the winds essentially west-northwest, about 10 knots near Falanga, but as you get toward, even with, say, Kendabu, they're quite light, northwest about 4 knots, so you'd be motoring into that, not very rough conditions, I don't think. And then up toward the Suva area on Tuesday, only about 2 knots, and that's out of the northwest. Then Wednesday it all changes. Wednesday it comes out of the south, and fairly light air, 7 knots, 10 knots, 3 knots. It's just very, very light air, but mostly south. Be technical about it, maybe south-southeast. And then if you waited for that, then on Thursday it looks like we're going to get back to easterlies, maybe east-southeast, but anywhere between east, southeast, and east. And we're looking at about 10 knots or so, looking at various models, 10 to 15. But that's all a good direction to go from Fulanga to Suva. So that's Thursday. Friday it changes once more, and it comes out of the north. So there you go. Mostly we do have some confusion on direction of not confusion, but conflicting winds for your boating pleasure. But at least they're not strong. So it's doable, but you'll probably be using the motor for some of it.
Well, there is plenty of fuel to be had in Suva. Could I have Mesa Luna or Bla Eleanor just give me a Roger so that we know you copied that? Over. Did anybody hear a Roger from one of those boats? I heard something, but well, hopefully they heard it. Otherwise, just get back to us on the email. That one came through on CruiserSat.net, so we could actually just send a reply, but it was a bit complicated. So to save our fingers, and we are tired after listening to the cricket and trying to do everything else at the same time. Okay, and we've actually got clearing skies here at the moment, so there's no rain, and there's quite a bit of blue sky above us. But we will not be going outside in 13 degrees for a while. It will be a coffee and recuperate the nerves after that cricket match. All right, I don't think we're going to be hearing anybody else. And Alan, on Contessa, I have sent that email off, so hopefully we'll hear today from Denise. Is there? We'll just do a last call. Is there anybody wanting anything? Please call now. Nothing heard, and if there's no relays, I'll just pause for a relay, but if there's no relays, we'll leave you the frequency. Cheers, everybody. Shutting down. We're gone. God, you've got a good radio. Seeing as you're such an expert at fixing radios, we'll have to give you a list of boats to keep you busy this summer. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, Roger Pilgrim came back to say that Excel was trying to do a relay. I actually heard them as well.
Okay, can you give a call for any boats that I can't copy, and we'll just see what's going on. I'll leave it with you until you tell me. Over.
Any boat copy Princess wants relay to
Go ahead, Alan. Oh, that's excellent news. Thanks for getting back, Jeff, and thanks, Alan. And I'll leave you to see if you can find Excel. Over.
Yeah, there's a few more in there. Any boat wanting Gold Harbour relay like this to come down. I didn't copy the log. Get him to call again. Yeah, I just got you now. Excel, any messages?
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Good morning to Excel. Yeah, I just heard your voice at the end there. Not to copy those. So heading from Bavau to Wallace and Fortuna later this week. So we will continue to do, folks, the Wallace Fortuna weather and the passage from, well, certainly from Tonga. Thanks, Alan. Back to you.
Roger. Any further vessels wanting to copy or relay to North Harbour come down?
But we should have done that before.
Very light copy on you, Jensen, but give a message over. Roger, copy that. North Harbour relay, Jensen, doing the now and say hello and good copy, over.
All right, and good morning to Tintin. I have booked you in with Vaughan Henderson for a radio upgrade when you return. All right, thanks, Alan. Doing a good job. It really doesn't make much sense that you are booming in so well and the others are not. We should really be changing the sked time, but given that we are going to be taking August off, it's probably not worth thinking about at this stage. But yep, well, you're doing a good job. We'll keep you on. Over.
Yeah, well, I have to thank you.
Yeah, they're expecting their new kitchen in a couple of weeks' time, so they've been pretty busy. I suspect they didn't do much over the weekend with the weather, but all's going well with the building. Over.
Roger, get contact, say hi from the Facebook.
Yeah, I'll certainly do that. Yep, I'm going to offer them David's Golf Club, seeing as they're right on the edge of the golf course there. They can take up a new hobby. All right, thanks very much, Alan. Have a good, safe trip. You're not going very far, though, are you? Over.
I think I've had a change of plan and probably heading to the north of Newtown and head down the northeast coast. The water here has dropped only about 2 degrees warmer than what I was when I came last week.
All right, you took a fade there. I suspect the radio is running out of oomph. So, all right, that'll be interesting going down the northeast coast. I wouldn't have thought with all the mining that there would be an awful lot of interest there, but we'll wait and see. Presume you'll be out on the outer reef area, but going down the northeast coast. All right, thanks, Alan. You're faded away a bit, so we'll leave it there. And we'll catch up with everybody again tomorrow. Cheers, Alan.